Welcome to the debate. Imagine a political machine so ruthlessly efficient that it can just, lock down the future of Africa's largest state economy in exactly 72 hours.
Right, no public campaigns at all.
Exactly. No grueling primary battles. Just this small, elite council of 34 people deciding the political fate of over 20 million citizens. And doing it long before the voters even realize the starting gun is fired.
And doing it with such surgical precision that the opposition is just left entirely flat-footed. But precision in politics often comes at a steep price. When you engineer an outcome so perfectly that the public never actually gets to weigh in, you really have to ask if you're building a stable democracy.
Or a cartel.
Exactly, or just a deeply entrenched political cartel.
And right there, we have arrived at the very heart of the extraordinary events that just unfolded in Nigeria. For our listeners following West African politics, Wednesday, April 29, 2026, was a complete watershed moment.
Oh, absolutely.
President Bola Tinubu formally endorsed Lagos State Deputy Governor Dr. Obafemi Hamzat as the APC, the All Progressives Congress consensus governorship candidate for the 2027 election. That happened at the presidential villa in Abuja, but the real story, the absolute masterclass in political maneuvering, is the 72-hour timeline right before that.
Yeah, it was a political blitzkrieg, really. On Monday, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu publicly names his deputy, Hamzat, as his preferred successor.
Right, at Lagos House.
Yep. Then, by Tuesday, the 34-member Governance Advisory Council, the GAC, unanimously adopts him. And then by Wednesday, they are in Abuja getting the president's blessing. Within 3 days, Hamzat went from being, just one of several potential aspirants to the undisputed, heavily fortified consensus candidate.
He really did, and my position today is that this Lagos APC succession model is just an absolute triumph of political stability. It is a system built on institutional loyalty and meticulous stewardship. It is purposefully designed to prevent the kind of chaotic, destructive transitions that routinely destabilize other states in Nigeria.
And I look at those exact same 3 days and argue that this model functions as a closed political oligarchy. It's an unelected 34-member body systematically suppressing genuine internal democracy in competitive primaries just to maintain absolute top-down control over Lagosians.
Well, let's lay out the foundation of why this system exists in the first place. When I look at the Lagos model, I see a political culture that rightly treats governance as a relay of stewardship.
A relay?
Yeah, a relay. It fundamentally rejects the idea that a state generating the lion's share of Nigeria's internally generated revenue should be subject to a chaotic scramble fueled by sheer individual ambition. Look at the evidence of who the system produces. Dr. Hamzat's pedigree is impeccable.
I don't think anyone is questioning his resume or his technical competence.
But you can't decouple that resume from how the party enforces the succession. He's a mechanical engineer. He was Commissioner for Science and Technology from 2002 to 2006.
Sure.
Then he took over Works and Infrastructure until 2007 under Tinubu and held it again under Governor Fashola. Now, for anyone listening outside of Nigeria, you need to understand that controlling Works and Infrastructure in Lagos is not just a ceremonial title.
No, it's massive.
Right. You are managing multi-billion naira budgets. You are navigating these really complex, high-stakes contractor networks. You are quite literally building the physical and political roads of the state. The system is deeply meritocratic because it demands this kind of grueling apprenticeship.
I come at it from a different way, because I think we need to separate administrative competence from democratic legitimacy. Yes, he knows how to build roads, but efficiency and preparation should never be confused with democracy.
Well,
Closely at how this decision was actually made on Tuesday. The Governance Advisory Council, led by deeply established figures like Prince Tajuddin Oluwole Alusi and former Governor Olusegun Osoba, comprises just 34 members. Just 34 people.
Yes, the elders of the party.
But in practice, this body operates entirely above the formal state executive committee. More astonishingly, they operate above the party's National Working Committee, which is supposed to be the supreme governing body of the party nationwide. They are entirely preempting the apparatus.
I'd say they are guiding the apparatus, not preempting it.
Wait, let me stop you there. Are you seriously suggesting that a 72-hour operation ending in a presidential endorsement isn't preemptive?
I'm saying it's organized.
The sheer speed of this maneuver wasn't just about showing a united front. It was a deliberate, calculated mechanism to kill off competitive primaries before the National Secretariat in Abuja could even, print the ballots or organize the logistics.
I think that's a bit cynical.
We already have dissenting aspirants like Samuel Ajo stepping forward on national television. They are arguing that this consensus label is merely a convenient, sanitized euphemism for imposition. It robs ordinary party members at the grassroots level of their fundamental right to choose who will carry their banner into 2027.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. I think the word imposition completely misunderstands the structural reality of the party. Let's look at the historical mechanics of this consensus process.
Okay.
Since 1999, the GAC's approach has successfully managed 5 successions. They navigated the transition from Tinubu to Fashola to Mbode to Sanwo-Olu, and now they are setting the stage for Hamzat. In all that time, over 27 unbroken years, they have never lost the state.
Which is a long time.
It's unprecedented. I look at this and see something akin to highly effective corporate succession planning.
Corporate succession?
Yes. Think about a massive multinational corporation. You do not leave the leadership of your most vital, profitable asset to a sudden roll of the dice among middle management. You cultivate your leadership over decades.
Right, but
You test them in different departments. Lagos APC relies on its shareholders, these grassroots power brokers represented by the GAC, to ensure the next CEO has the exact right pedigree and institutional memory to keep the company profitable.
I hear the corporate logic and it sounds neat on paper. But I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
A political party in a constitutional democracy is not a private corporation. It does not exist to maximize shareholder value for a select board of directors sitting in a room in Acacia. It derives its sole foundational legitimacy from the franchise of its citizens.
But the goal is to govern.
Yes, but when you use corporate logic to justify political succession, you are essentially admitting out loud that the citizens, the actual party members, are not stakeholders to be consulted. They are merely consumers who must passively accept whatever product you decide to put on the shelf.
But the party members want to win elections. Above all else, a political party is a vehicle for acquiring and maintaining power so it can actually implement policies, and this corporate model, as you critique it, guarantees victory.
At the cost of choice?
But it prevents the structural damage that brutal, openly competitive primaries inflict on a party. Let's talk about the reality of bloodletting in Nigerian politics. When you have a fractured primary, the loser's faction doesn't just go home quietly.
That is historically true, yes.
Right. They often actively sabotage the winner in the general election, funneling money and votes to the opposition. The GAC functions as a pressure valve that prevents that internal destruction.
Does it act as a pressure valve, or does it just bolt the lid down so tight that nobody can breathe? Let's examine the mechanics of how this piece is maintained, specifically regarding the nomination forms.
Okay.
The GAC didn't just endorse Hamzat on Tuesday. They pledged to collectively purchase his 50 million naira nomination form.
Which, is a powerful symbol of their backing.
Well, it is a symbol that nullifies the entire democratic process. Think about the mechanics of this. If a unified 34-member body, which includes the sitting governor and is publicly backed by the president of the republic, predetermines the candidate on a Wednesday, what is the purpose of those nomination forms for anyone else?
It allows them to participate.
But does it? If you are Samuel Ajose and you've somehow scraped together your own 50 million naira to buy an expression of interest in nomination form, what are you actually buying? You aren't buying a chance to compete.
You are buying a chance to run.
You are buying a very expensive 50 million naira ticket to a race that has already been run and won behind closed doors at Lagos House. It makes the fee essentially a mandatory donation to a party that has already rejected you.
You are buying the right to test your popularity, which is perfectly permissible within the party's constitution. Nobody is physically stopping anyone from buying a form.
But the system renders the purchase meaningless.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because you are ignoring how the system actually rewards the patience required to build that popularity. Hamzat's elevation is the ultimate proof that in the Lagos APC, deep institutional loyalty is rewarded.
Rewarded by whom, though?
By the party structure.
You have to remember his history. He ran in 2015 and lost the primary to Akinwumi Bode. In 2018, he prepared to enter the race again, but he explicitly stood down for Sanwo-Olu in a consensus arrangement brokered by Tinubu.
Right, the famous step down.
That was a massive act of political discipline. He waited 8 years as deputy governor. As Sanwo-Olu himself eloquently put it, Hamzat is someone who knows the room and understands the design of the house. This queue system prevents the emergence of deeply wounded, desperate candidates.
You use the word discipline to describe Hamzat stepping down in 2018. But we really need to ask, when does party discipline morph into subjugation? Is it really institutional loyalty, or is it just a demand for absolute, unquestioning submission to the cartel?
That's a harsh way to phrase it.
But you claim this prevents bloodletting, yet there is clear public evidence of internal friction right now. You mentioned nobody is physically stopping people from running, but look at the psychological barriers. Samuel Ajozi isn't just complaining privately. He's openly criticizing this process on national networks like Arise News, stating clearly that the top leadership forced this decision to preempt the grassroots.
Ajose is one voice.
But he's not the only indicator. Look at Jandor Olajide Aderon. This is the man who was the PDP's governorship candidate, the main opposition against Sanwo-Olu in 2023.
Right, who just defected.
Exactly. He recently defected to the APC and has reportedly purchased forms to test this very primary process. That is an incredibly unusual, highly risky move for a recent defector. It strongly suggests that even newcomers looking at the APC from the outside see the consensus model not as an impenetrable fortress of unity, but as an aging structure that is actually vulnerable to a challenge.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on what those challenges actually represent.
Go for it.
The fact that Ajaje can go on national television and criticize the process, or that Jandor, a former PDP rival, feels comfortable enough to buy an APC form, empirically proves my point. The space isn't closed by authoritarian force.
Really?
Yes. As GAC Chairman Prince Olusi explicitly stated this week, we live in a free society and people are absolutely free to express their opinions.
Well, expressing an opinion is very different from having a fair shot at the ticket.
True. But historically, no competitive primary has ever overturned the GAC's predetermined outcome. And this is the crucial distinction. That isn't because the GAC uses state coercion or violence.
I disagree.
It is because the GAC's decision genuinely reflects the deep, structural consensus of the party's vast network of grassroots power brokers. The impossibility of overturning the GAC isn't a bug of the system. It is the defining feature of its stability. They align the various factions before the public fight can even happen.
I disagree entirely with the premise that the GAC's power isn't coercive. Coercion doesn't always look like police at a polling unit, you know? When the GAC speaks, it brings the entire financial, structural, and political weight of the state government with it.
It's an endorsement.
It dictates who gets contracts, who gets appointments, who gets local government chairmanships. It is not a gentle suggestion. It is an edict from the boardroom. Ajose's fundamental question on Arise News remains completely unanswered.
Which is?
Does this represent genuine internal democracy? If the only way to rise to the top of the executive branch is to spend 20 years waiting for 34 men to decide it's your turn, you are inevitably draining the vitality and innovation out of the party base.
But look at the alternative. You are demanding a procedural purity that could easily fracture the party at the worst possible time. We have to broaden the lens here from just Lagos to the national implications, because you simply cannot analyze Lagos politics in a vacuum.
Right, the 2027 angle.
Exactly. The APC's strategic imperatives for the 2027 national elections demand exactly this kind of decisive, preemptive action. Consider the pragmatic reality. Lagos carries immense symbolic and financial weight. It is the president's home base.
It is the absolute anchor of their national strategy.
It is. And look at the specific actors involved in this 72-hour window. You have James Faleke, a man who represents Ikeja Federal Constituency and leads the powerful Tinubu support group.
Right.
He went to the APC National Secretariat in Abuja to personally purchase Hamzat's governorship form alongside President Tinubu's own presidential nomination form. That is not a coincidence.
No, it's highly choreographed.
It is a profound political statement that explicitly links their fates. Securing the APC's most important political base from Abuja is a masterstroke of political risk management for Tinubu's 2027 re-election project.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered what that extreme level of risk management actually reveals about their internal confidence?
What do you mean?
To me, it reveals a profound, almost paralyzing underlying vulnerability within the system. Let's follow your logic for a second. If the Lagos succession model is so organically popular, if it is truly the triumph of meritocracy and unshakable grassroots consensus that you claim it is, why must the campaign architecture be actively managed and consolidated from the presidential villa in Abuja?
Because the national stakes are just too high to lead to local chance.
But that is exactly my point. If you are terrified of chance, you are terrified of the voters. Top-down consolidation of this magnitude betrays a deep fear of democratic fragility. By having the president physically bless the candidate on Wednesday, immediately rubber-stamping the Monday and Tuesday state-level maneuvers, they are sending a very clear, chilling message to the base.
I wouldn't call it chilling.
It says, do not dare challenge this. It isn't just about aligning Legos with Abuja. It is about using the overwhelming, awe-inspiring power of the presidency to extinguish local internal party dissent before it can take root.
It's about unity.
That isn't a sign of a healthy, robust party confident in its record. It is a sign of an oligarchy that is terrified of what might happen if they actually let their members vote without a metaphorical gun to their heads.
I would strongly push back on the phrase gun to their heads. I would call it unparalleled political discipline in the face of complex electoral math. And ultimately, we have to look at the outcomes this system produces for the citizens.
Outcomes matter, yes.
The unbroken 27-year electoral record of the Lagos APC since 1999 is not a fluke, and it wasn't achieved purely through intimidation. It is empirical proof of the undeniable effectiveness of the GAC's institutional stewardship.
Unbroken, sure.
They have built a machine that delivers governance. They ensure the continuity of massive multi-decade infrastructure projects like the blue and red rail lines. And they seamlessly transition power from one highly competent administrator to the next.
And I maintain that you can have highly competent administration without sacrificing the soul of democratic choice. Wrapping an oligarchy in the comforting professional language of consensus and stewardship does not change what it fundamentally is.
It's a localized democratic model.
It stifles democratic development in Nigeria's most advanced cosmopolitan state. Furthermore, it leaves dissenting voices, people within the party who might want to offer radical alternative visions for how to handle housing, traffic, flooding, and public service delivery, completely out in the cold. Efficiency is an excellent trait in an administrator, but it is not a substitute for enfranchisement.
Well, while we clearly diverge on the philosophy of how powers should be distributed, what we absolutely agree on is the factual reality on the ground today. The Lagos APC machine, directed by the Governance Advisory Council, remains an unparalleled political apparatus in Nigeria.
Oh, without a doubt.
Their ability to execute a flawless 72-hour maneuver from the governor's initial declaration on Monday to the GAC's lockstep adoption on Tuesday to the presidential endorsement in Abuja on Wednesday has fundamentally reshaped the 2027 electoral landscape before anyone else even realized the game had begun.
Unquestionably. The sheer operational velocity of what happened this week is staggering. To pull off a political maneuver of this magnitude in just 3 days is moving at light speed for any political system anywhere.
It really is.
It is a display of unified institutional force that no other political party in the country, whether it's the PDP or the Labour Party, can currently replicate.
And the true test of this model will not just be fought in the television studios or debated by analysts like us. It will be tested on the ground by how the opposition, specifically the emerging ADC coalition, the Labour Party, and others, attempt to navigate a candidate in Dr. Hamzat, who is now backed by the unified, monolithic force of the sitting governor, the GAC, and the president.
That will be the real challenge.
And, perhaps more intriguingly, It will be tested by whether internal dissenters like Ajase and Jandor are actually willing to push past the mandated consensus and try to force a vote at the primary.
Ultimately, the citizens of Lagos and the observers of Nigerian democracy globally will have to just watch this play out. Does the procedural requirement of internal democracy outweigh the guaranteed stability of a meticulously managed succession?
Exactly.
Can a structure be called truly sound if its architects never allow it to bear the unpredictable, chaotic weight of public choice?
It leaves us with a rather uncomfortable question. If a political system guarantees relative peace, continuity, and economic prosperity, does it really matter if the voters never actually got a say in how it was engineered? We'll leave that to you to decide. Thank you for joining us.